Get ready to dive into the comic book realm where heroes rise and villains take the helm. We're here to dissect the stories and the art. Our source material, we tear the panels apart.
As we get into our final 5 issues, it's going to be the first 5 issues of the 2005 run. Our creative team on issues 1 through 3, Dan Slott writing, penciled by Juan Bobillo, inked by Marcelo Sosa, lettered by David Sharp, colored by Dan Kemp. Issue 4, the only thing that changes, our artist becomes Scott Collins and colored by Wilfredo Quintana. In issue 5, we're back to Juan Bobillo on pencils, Marcelo Sosa on inks, and then Dan Kemp back on color. So basically the same creative team as issues 1 through 3. All right, here we go. Issues 1 through 5. Jen is back at the reconstructed Timely Plaza, but now it's under the control, or I should say direction, of a guy by the name of Arthur Zix, who was put in charge by Holden Holloway, as he's off looking for Southpaw. So our first case, Charles Zarkowski, who was caught on film shooting a man, but he claims that it was a man sent from the future to kill him. Oh, boy. Let's get my hand rubbing right now. Yeah.
Oh, Jesse took his pants off to read this story.
Mallory Book is back, but she's in a wheelchair. The firm is now representing supervillains. Turns out that's a little bit more lucrative. Jen meets up with Doc Samson again. He tries to make her understand that her recent adventures that resulted in the devastation were not her fault. The TVA, the Time Variance Authority, is now involved because we've got a time travel case on our hands here, and they want to make sure things are in order. In order to do that, they have brought people in from prior to the incident occurring. What do they call this, Mark, where you want to get the right jury?
Yeah, so one of the things they talked about is that they have been showing this video wall to wall on the news. There's no possible way anyone living in the Manhattan area hasn't seen this video at this point.
Zarkowski is a very prominent individual. He's the 9th richest man in the world.
Yeah. So you have to create a jury of your peers that doesn't have knowledge of the case. They can't come in with any kind of prejudice. And the argument is, well, there's no way they can create a jury. Everyone in New York has seen this fucking thing.
Right.
So the argument is, what if we go back in time and grab jury members before the incident ever happened?
Smart.
And so one of the people that they grab is Clint Barton, Hawkeye, who was dead, by the way.
Yeah.
Who I believe died during Avengers Disassembled, if I got my events right. In any case, they figure out about midway through this that everybody who's on the jury died a year ago.
Yeah, all at the same time, if I remember correctly.
Because they don't want to create paradox.
Right.
That's a big deal with the Time Variance Authority, is making sure that if you're going to mess with time, you don't do so in a way that creates paradoxes. That's where having to prune timelines and erase people comes into play.
And Jen, in her infinite wisdom, decides that she's going to try and save Hawkeye.
When I heard her reference the Doc Brown letter, I laughed out loud.
Oh, yeah. Jen's idea of... Okay, so she's like, I'm going to save Hawkeye. I need to figure out a way to save him in some way. Pug, by the way, she's decided to run this past Pug. Pug is like, do you have any idea what you're doing? Number one, you're going up against the TVA. You could get this whole case thrown out. What in the world are you thinking?
I didn't love this. I didn't love her single-minded pursuit to save Hawkeye to the exclusion of all else, including her career. The first 12 of this were solid. This kind of lost me.
Okay.
This seems out of character for Jen. They had to make her kind of an impulsive idiot in order to have this story.
Well, you got to think this is her teammate. This is a person that saved lives in the past.
A lot of people have died on the Avengers.
And I think that's probably Pug's argument, too, especially when he points out, like, hey, everybody is going to die on that same day.
So you're only going to save Hawkeye? And that's one of the thematic threads throughout this entire run. As a superhero, what are your obligations? Do you save everybody? At what cost? You know, there's a lot of questions about what is the role, what is the nature of superheroing? And that's the kind of, and that's his point to her, is what are you only going to, like, how ethical is that you're only going to save the one guy?
Right.
Because he matters to you. Is it none of these people matter? Is that what you're saying? And her answer is they don't. Only Clint matters.
Yep.
And it was like, that is, you are cutting off your nose to spite your face.
And she follows through with that, too. I mean, at the beginning of issue 2, it gets funny because Clint has decided, well, you know, I don't care if I'm sequestered here. He goes out and starts heroing.
Everyone's reaction to him is so funny. Hey, aren't you dead? And like, but they never get to the dead part because are you? And I'm like, that's right, I'm Hawkeye.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Anyway, he comes back the next day, being a faithful juror member. Zarkowski's case takes some weird turns as we get into issue 2. During the case, remember Jen trying to sign language everything, just trying to get away with like, okay, I know he's deaf.
Pug's Life was like, or you're signaling to steal third.
She don't know what she's doing. Yeah, she don't know what she's doing. But anyway, she's trying to tell Clint, like, look, you are going to die, and this is how it's going to happen. And she comes with the Doc Brown note. We find out that Zarkowski invented time travel, like the definitive time travel that will cause paradoxes and all this other crazy stuff, because time travel's been around before, but he definitely mentions in here that it isn't something with alternate timelines or anything like that. This is time travel. And that's one of the things, if you look at time travel as far as the Marvel Universe goes and talking about like branching out into alternate realities, that's usually the way that they would go. This guy is supposedly the guy that invented the actual things. Zarkowski says, there is a time traveler that's coming to kill me. And I knew he was coming, and that's why I shot this guy in the back, because it was him.
Self-defense.
Yeah. He'd showed up. I knew it was him, and I shot him. By the end, there's a big battle in the courtroom. The TVA's like, we've got to send everybody back to their times right now. And that's just as Jen gets up there, hands Clint the letter, and half of it goes with him back to his time while she's holding the other half. So she doesn't know if he's understanding anything that's in the letter. But anyway, they all get sent back. That's the end of the case. It's a mistrial. Well, Zarkowski's run off, and he's used this thing called a time scrambler, or something the TVA has, to change his looks and his appearance. And then as he looks, after this is done, he realizes that his face is the same face of the man that he shot. So he decides to record a video that gets sent to himself. And he's like, wait a second. He realizes what's about to happen, and he's not going to do any time travel whatsoever. So this doesn't happen. So he doesn't end up killing himself. And that's when the TVA comes up behind him, grabs him and says, too bad, you got to go, and transports him back into the past where he shoots himself. But he doesn't die. He's just in a coma, and he ends up waking up, and they end up later going to him and like, okay, well, what can we get you on then? I mean, you tried to kill yourself. And
oh my God, that conversation is the best part of this. It's just like, well, we're going to get him for attempted murder, but the victim was himself. Therefore, it's a suicide. We can't charge him. Then we'll charge him with insider trading. Again, he was sending information to himself. This is the part that I thought was funny. They were like, time travel technology and research and development is expensive. So he was sending himself stock tips
to finance
it. Right. And that's it. It wasn't the person to enrich himself. It was to continue to develop time travel devices.
Oh, it's beautiful. I loved it. Yeah. I had a good time. But by the end of the issue, the TVA wasn't stupid. They knew exactly what Jen was doing. They grab her and they say, okay, you're arrested. We're taking you for trial. If you're found guilty of these crimes, you are going to be erased from existence. All right. So then we get into issue 3, which is legacy numbering 100. So it's a big double-sized issue. I was talking to Mark earlier. There was 2 reprints in this issue. So She-Hulk's on trial at the TVA.
Yep.
And they bring her in.
This issue annoyed the piss out of me.
Go ahead. Tell me why.
Okay, so She-Hulk, they catch She-Hulk trying to give Clint Barton the letter. That's illegal. You're not allowed to give somebody knowledge of their own death. That creates problems with timelines, yada, yada, yada. So their whole thing with her is you broke a pretty substantial law and you broke it badly. It's so bad, you essentially get the death penalty. The death penalty for the Time Variance Authority is you were erased from the timeline from ever having existed. The trial hinges on proving that her existence was important enough to preserve despite the infraction, and the prosecution has to prove that removing her from the timeline will have a negligible, if any, effect at all. Which means it's a stream of character witnesses jerking her off. This was not a well-written issue, because if the idea is to prove that without her, certain events won't happen, and those events are important, that isn't what they talked about. What they talked about was she was an awesome gal. Mm-hmm. And that drove me insane.
Well, that was most of the trial. But the thing that nailed it, though, which, by the way, She-Hulk says, I need the best representation possible. I need it from my firm immediately. And we find out that they actually reach forward 30 years from her present to grab Southpaw, who has grown up to be one of the best lawyers that they have. Yep. So she is representing She-Hulk here in this case.
That was good stuff. Like the inclusion of South, like my grandfather encouraged me to be a lawyer, and you encouraged me to be a better person, because when we meet Southpaw is kind of like the Greek chorus in this whole thing. When she shows up, everything Jen does is bad. She keeps going to like freak show and freak job or whatever they calls her. Every time Jen does something, she'll be like, yeah, but it's like my coworker with the records. I only played it once, but you ate off it twice. Those kinds of comments. At one point, Jen even says, "You can't let me have one, can you?" It's like, nope, not even.
Right, right.
She's just a 15-year-old snotty girl. And then when we meet her again, she's grown up to become this lawyer, and she says that, "Jen, you inspired me to be a better person." So that was sweet. That stuff I liked.
Yeah. But as far as the trial goes, first off, this is a big double-sized 100 issue. You've got to bring in things to support why some of the just nods to previous stories and whatever. The thing that nails it down, though, is not the fact that everybody's talking about how nice she is. The one TVA agent's like, okay, let me tell you one thing. I want to take you into the future and I'll show you are responsible for something called the Reckoning War, which doesn't just affect the planet, it affects the universe. And she's like, I won't do it. I just won't do it. And they're like, you've already done it. It's already set in motion. This is going to happen. So it's something she's done in the past. And I have a feeling it's something to do with the Watchers. But anyway, what nails it home is like Southpaw's like, I've got it. Or maybe it was Pug that came up with the idea. But either way, they bring in everybody that she saved and they all testify, which is what nails it. And they're like, okay, all right, well, that's fine.
Well, what they're saying is by virtue of if you remove She-Hulk from the timeline, these people aren't saved.
Right.
And if they're not saved, it creates all these other problems.
Yeah.
So again, to win, they have to prove that her existence is impactful on the timeline. And that's how they prove it.
Mm-hmm. And it's just not this trial here. We also have a villain that hitches a ride with the TVA by the name of Clockwise, who gets a hold of the Ret can and starts firing.
I laughed at too. I was like, haha. See what you did there.
Yeah, they erase the existence of Nightman and Dr. Rocket, who nobody has any idea who they are because Clockwise erased them from existence. But anyway, at the end of this, they end up winning the case. She-Hulk is given a prisoner, Avenger. So the TVA has all these time cells, and I don't know how, but their prison's full. So even the TVA has limitations.
I was going to talk about that for 1 second. Because at one point, She-Hulk's like, but why are you coming down so hard on me? We're Avengers. We save people. And they're like, that's not what we're interested in here. We're interested in who affects the timeline. You Avengers are the worst.
You are the worst. You guys are the worst.
Do you remember, because it was one of the times that we did it synergizing with one of the Marvel movies. Do you remember the storyline that we did where they collected, I think it was Avengers Through Time, and it was like two different versions of Hank Pym. And it was like
I mentioned that here.
Yeah, they mentioned that as an example of the event horrible about breaking time.
One of the
worse than Eddie Kang. Absolutely the worst. That's hilarious.
One of the TVA agents has a wallet full of pictures of the worst stuff the Avengers have done to time.
Yeah.
And he pulls it out. He's like, this, and this, and this. Yeah. But anyway, so the prison's full. Time cells are full. They're like, okay, we're going to let you go, but you are going to be responsible for one of these people in a time cell because we got to put Clockwise in there. She's like, okay, well, I want the Avenger that I saw when I was first brought in here that you guys have prisoner. We find out it's Two Gun Kid. That's right. The Two Gun Kid. Well, okay. Let's talk about the next issue, which is back to Bone, Idaho.
I have nothing to say about this. I mean, been ready to get through it.
This is a focus on what traumatized her. I mean, this is the core of what Jen Walters' issues are throughout most of what happens in the first series. This is mentioned over and over where she lost her stuff. She ends up killing the Vision. She ends up destroying this town. Everybody blames the Hulk, but She-Hulk was actually the one that was responsible for most of the devastation.
He said he took the blame.
He took the blame. The point of issue 4 is before she's sent back home from the TVA, Mobius is like, well, what have you been doing for the 8 months that you were kind of gone? And that's what this issue is about. She goes back to Bone, Idaho as Jen Walters to help the community rebuild from the devastation that happened there because she feels really responsible. She ends up solving a murder in the process, but by the end of it, it helped her get through some of the stuff. She actually apologizes. She changes into her She-Hulk form and everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's back again. But she apologizes for what happens because she realizes that the only way to move forward, this community can move forward and she can move forward is if she accepts responsibility and tries to work with them for their forgiveness. And they do end up forgiving her. She becomes a big part of the community. And yeah, at the end of this issue is when we learned the Avenger she saved was the two-gun kid, because he's like, okay, we're sending you back now, and here's two-gun. He's going with you. I liked it. I thought it was a good issue to focus on what exactly she did to try to recover from what happened. Then we finally get to issue 5. And this is just a fun romp with Two-Gun Kid trying to acclimate to 2005. He shows up there. Awesome Andy's on a mission, and we find out that he's on a secret mission to help Mallory get back in. He's doing physiotherapy with Mallory. And poor Awesome Andy, having to sit there and watch, he's just this big block-headed android, doesn't have a mouth. He can't say anything. The only way he could communicate was with a piece of chalk and a chalkboard hung around his neck. He has to watch Two-Gun Kid make eyes at Mallory, and Mallory's just, she is so smitten with Two-Gun Kid.
Oh, yeah. She definitely got the vapors.
But they decide, Jen's like, hey, let's go ahead. What did you used to be? Let's try and figure out something for you to do. And Two-Gun Kid's like, well, yeah, I used to be a lawyer. And they're like, oh, great, let's put you into practicing law. And he's got to try and catch up on all this law. And it turns out that's not exactly what he's good at. What he's good at is rootin', tootin', and shooting. So he finally, I think... Mallory ends up talking to him like, hey, pick up your weapons. We'll get you covered. And he ends up going out on the town and facing off with Bushwhacker. And he feels right at home then at that point. And then we find out Hawkeye left Two-Gun Kid a DVD. Mm-hmm. The DVD's like, hey, just in case you're back, I'm doing this for everybody. Just in case you're back, why don't there's something for you at my storage unit. He goes down to the storage unit, and there is this little air cycle. And they go off, and it's She-Hulk and Two-Gun Kid riding an air cycle, and that's the last panel. So, again, I mean, it wasn't much, but just kind of a fun romp. This series goes on for quite a while. The 2005 series does. Mm-hmm. I found it interesting that we ended here on issue 5. I would have thought that...
I don't understand when they made the trade, why they just didn't make it 1 through 12 and leave it at that.
Yeah, it seems really strange. I don't know if this just because they wanted to fit more issues and make more bang for the buck. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's weird. I like the inclusion of my last comment on this, the time trials. I liked the court case with the guy shooting himself. That was fun. That was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I like the idea of prosecuting Jen for disrupting the timeline. There were consequences to her actions. I don't think it was handled the best way, but that stuff was interesting. The issue with Bone, I couldn't care less about. Just don't give a shit. My favorite thing is Two-Gun trying to argue, shouldn't Reed Richards keep the bounty he had rightfully earned? And the judge is like, would you sit this maniac down and teach him about antitrust laws? And he's like, aw. It's so funny because later on, and I really love this, it was a little moment in the book that I was like, this is a very human moment for me. This is good writing. Where, yeah, he's like, maybe I shouldn't be a lawyer. There's a lot to catch up on here, a lot that I don't understand. And my time as being a lawyer may have passed. And Jen's like, no, you're a lawyer. You should always be a lawyer. And Mallory's like, how about he's a grown man? You only let him make his own decisions.
Right.
And so I think he's not like a bounty hunter or anything, but he ends up working for the law firm. Mm-hmm. And that's why he gets the motorcycle the air cycle at the end. And that's a really fun shot of him and She-Hulk. I don't hate time trials. And I would like to, I know I've booked up our schedule from like now to eternity, but at some point I would like to get a copy of, I think it's actually out of print. I don't know how I'm going to find it. But I would like to come back and finish and do the next volume of the Dan Slott She-Hulk.
Okay. I'm glad you had a good time. I did too.
This is like the best thing we've read in a really long time.
I had a blast.
It's so funny because I'm so down on Marvel and DC for a lot of the things we've already talked about. It was nice to come in and read something that was definitively Marvel. It couldn't be any more Marvel if it tried. And I'm glowing this much about it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they do with the character She-Hulk because she's not a main enough character to where she's off limits to do stuff like this. You take other characters and put them in a situation like in the story type of stories that they were writing or Dan Slott was writing here. They're kind of a sacred cow for a lot of people.
What happened with Captain America when they made him Captain Hydra? It made the news and people almost burnt Marvel comics down.
Right.
You know, when they race swapped a lot of characters with the all new, all different Marvel, people are still crying about it. Yeah. And I love the fact that, like, I don't think it helped sell comic books. I think the all new, all different Marvel experiment has not worked out. But boy, did the films take the all new, all different Marvel and go, this is what we're doing. Yeah. Like, maybe see if it works first.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm a firm believer of tell a good story.
Yep.
And then we can get behind that if it's a good story. But you could do that with brand new characters. It doesn't have to be the same ones over and over. All right, folks. We're done here. Let's get into plugs. Mark, what do you got going on over there on the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network?
Check out at Mark Rattledge on TikTok. I'm also Mark Kind, MarkKind 76 on the Instagram. You can check out the Rattledge and Broadcasting Network on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And then if you want to see my beautiful face, it's on W2M Network on YouTube and Twitch for short clips of what we're doing. I haven't been as good. I've been busy lately. I haven't had time to sit and edit as much as I should be. I am now over a month backed up on shows that we've done. I can keep up on triple features because those are easy for me to cut. But everything else where I have to dig in and re-listen to stuff and find a good 10 to 30 minutes that I can use, I'm backed up past December. My TikTok I'm not keeping up with my TikTok like I used to. However, whenever Jesse writes a song about putting poop in a bag, that immediately goes on my TikTok. If I spend time with my kids and my son has a funny rant, that immediately goes up on TikTok.
That's fantastic.
Plugs.
Ladies and gentlemen, check out the Source Material Comics podcast feed. If you have any podcatcher out there, you should be able to find all of our shows in the archive. We have this one where we talk comics of any era. We have the Unspoken Issues podcast, which is in association with the Unspoken Decade. We focus on 90s comics on that podcast. And then, of course, the Snap Material podcast. Me and Evan Bevins talk about Marvel Snap, the mobile card game. We should be recording that coming up this week, so keep an eye out for that. Mark, thanks for joining me on this journey. I am Jesse Starcher. We are getting out of here. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.